Hey, this is Jeremy Enns with Ascetic Productions, and today we're talking all about how to easily improve your podcast guest audio quality. So, I know that this is something that a lot of us podcasters who record remotely struggle with. And you'll be in the middle of a call, and your guest is going to be saying something amazing, and the internet breaks up. And you're going to have to ask them to go back and, redo that part. And maybe it's not going to have quite the same flow. Maybe you have to go back way further and they're not really sure and it just breaks up the interview. Maybe the call drops entirely and causes all kinds of problems. So this is something that a lot of us struggle with, and today we're going to talk about some ways to get around that and some of the other issues. So before we dive in, a little bit about me. As I mentioned, my name is Jeremy Enns, and I'm the founder of Ascetic Productions, and we are a podcast, consulting, production, management company that really loves working with entrepreneurs and brands and podcasters and helping them share their story in an authentic way and share their worldview with their target audience and, help connect with them and form meaningful relationships. So today we're talking about how to improve the guest audio. And there are a couple different aspects of guest audio. So the internet feed is probably the one you notice the most and probably the one that causes you the most frustrations. There are some ways to avoid that, which we're going to be talking about, but there are also some other aspects of getting great quality guest audio that, by instructing your guests on beforehand, can do a lot to improve the quality of their audio during the recording. So first, we're going to talk about the internet feed. So the first option to record our guests and to solve the internet feed quality issue is to take the internet feed out of the equation entirely. And so there are a few ways we can do that. The first one would be to record our guests live and in person. And this is great. You guys are going to have this exact same audio quality, but not all of us have that option. Sometimes, or oftentimes with many of us, we're recording people from different states or provinces and across the country, maybe on another continent, and it just doesn't work out. So that is a great option if you can do it, but I understand a lot of us can't. So the second option is to have them record their audio on their own, on their end, and then send it to us afterwards. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later. And the third option is to use a service called Zencastr. And there are a couple others that are similar. One is called Ringer. I can't quite remember the name of the other one. I haven't used either of those, but I do have experience with Zencastr, and it's worked really well for me. So that's the one I'm going to talk about today. And so probably right now, when you're recording your guests remotely, you might be using Skype, and you might be going with something like Ecamm Call Recorder or Pamela and recording it through there. So the issue here is that you're recording their audio through the internet. So the internet is degrading the quality of their audio by the time it gets to your computer where it's being recorded. And so that's a bit of an issue. It just does not sound as good. Even if they're using a great mic and they have an awesome audio setup on their end, it's just not going to sound that great a lot of times. So Zencastr works a little bit differently in that it records each of your audio, so your audio and your guest's audio, locally on your respective computer. So your guest's audio is being recorded to their computer while the call is going on, and your audio is being recorded to your computer while the call is going on. And at the end of the call, both files, actually it'll produce 4 files. It produces 2 waves, one wave file of each, which is the high quality audio, and then one MP3 for each of you. And so then all those files are uploaded to a linked Dropbox account automatically, and you don't have to worry about anything after that. You just need to bring them into Audacity or GarageBand or Audition or whatever you're using and line them up, and there you go. You've got your interview. And because there's no internet feed, the audio is really high quality. If they're using a mic and have a nice audio setup, it's going to sound amazing. And so that's really what you want. Zencastr is my favorite tool for remote recording, and it's the one I recommend the most. But it's not going to be the best option for everyone, and there are a couple drawbacks still. So I think it was only about the start of this year that it came out of beta testing and had the full release. And it was in beta testing for probably about a year before that. And I'd used it then and it was fine. And I'm assuming it's only going to be getting better now that they actually have some paying customers and can, invest in improving their product. So some of the drawbacks of its current state are, right now it is only supported by the Chrome web browser. So this isn't necessarily a huge deal. Obviously, Chrome is free to download. It's available on Windows and Mac, so there shouldn't be any issues there other than it is asking your guests, if they don't use Chrome already, to use a browser that they might not be familiar with or download it entirely. So depending on who your guests are, that may or may not be an issue. Probably not the biggest deal. Number two is that you and your guest both must be on a desktop or a laptop computer. There's no mobile support at the time. I know some of my clients record guests frequently who are on their phone using either Skype on their phone or in some other way, and so that is definitely a little bit inconvenient for guests sometimes if they are on the move a lot, and it is a bit more of a hassle to get out the laptop, let's say. But again, it shouldn't be a make or break scenario if you give them enough heads up that these are the requirements. The third drawback is that your guests have to keep their browser window open with Zencastr until the end of the recording. After that, the file is then uploaded to the Dropbox account. They need to keep their browser window open throughout this time. And the good thing is, if they do try to exit out of the browser, there will be a little message from Zencastr saying, hey, wait till the audio is finished uploading, and then you can close it. So it's, again, a little bit more work for your guests than using Skype and Call Recorder, Pamela, or something like that. Number four, there's no video support. I know some of my clients, especially if there's more than two people on the call, like to use the video to cue off of each other. And it's not the biggest deal when there's only two people, but like I said, with more people on a recording, it can get quite confusing. People are talking over each other. You can do a workaround where you have Skype open in the background and just the mics are muted, but this is going to take up more bandwidth. I'm assuming the reason why there is no video in Zencastr is for that reason, because video uses so much bandwidth. It's going to make trade-offs and degrade the audio quality, so they just went all audio. So you can do that workaround, but again, the audio quality might not be as good. And then the last one is that some users might find the interface a little bit more intimidating. Probably not a big deal for you. You'll have time to experiment with it and set up your account and everything. For your guests, it shouldn't be a big deal, but for some maybe less tech-savvy users, it might be a little bit intimidating as opposed to just a Skype call, which they might be more familiar with. So ultimately, I think that Zencastr is the best option for many people. And actually, I do want to mention that during the call, the audio is being recorded to each of your computers, so it's going to be pristine, but there still might be some breaks in the recording from the internet breaking up and stuff like that for the call. So things still can get a little awkward sometimes when you're talking to somebody if the internet is bad. But the great thing is that afterwards, you'll be able to sync up that audio, and it's going to sound great because none of that internet noise is in the final recordings. So like I said, Zencastr is a great option, maybe the best thing out there right now. I have heard a lot of people have had issues with both Ringr and Zencastr, and I'm not sure if that's because of long distances between where they're recording or poor internet connections or whatnot. I haven't had any issues, and the clients that I've worked with who have used it have not had any issues either. So I assume it's going to get better and those issues are going to be resolved going forward, but you might run into some difficulties still at some point as it is a fairly new service. And like I mentioned, it might not be for everybody. I did a test with one of my clients who we went through it and decided that it wasn't the best fit for them, even though they really do care a lot about having, pristine guest audio quality. So the reasoning for them was that most of their guests are probably 40 on the younger end, up to 80 or even older than 80. And they are like world-class experts in some areas, and tech savviness is maybe not one of those areas. And also with them, there's two hosts and often at least one, if not more, guests, and they really rely on the video to cue off of each other. So there are some reasons why it might not be a good fit for you, but in general, for one-on-one interview calls, I think Zencastr is probably one of the best options out there at the moment. And I'm a big fan of it, especially over Skype and Call Recorder or Pamela and one of those combinations. So we've talked a bit about the feed here and how to get around the internet feed and improve your audio that way. The other way we want to talk about improving our guest recordings is by getting it right at the source. So if we all had our way, probably most of our guests would have years of broadcasting experience. They'd be super polished speakers. They'd be in a professional studio and they'd have a team of sound engineers recording them. That is unfortunately not even close to the case generally. So usually we're stuck with echoey offices. They're probably recording on their laptop mics. They might not have a lot of experience being interviewed or talking into the mic on a recording. And so it's our job as the host to educate them on what they can do to help us out and get the best quality audio possible, regardless of their setup. So I'm going to link to a post that I posted earlier this week, an article, and at the bottom of that article, you can find my own guest briefing that I send out to all my guests and a bit of a checklist for what they should be doing to help improve audio. So you can grab that. I'll put the link in the description after this recording, and that is a free download on my website. And some of those things that are on that list, or all of those things that are on that list, are going to be, number one, to think about where they're conducting the recording. So this is one of the bigger issues we face. Oftentimes it's the echoey rooms, and it just does not sound that great. You get a whole bunch of echo from their voice back into the microphone, and it does not sound polished. So get them to think about what room they're going to be recording in, if it's their house or their office, and any potential issues. I know a lot of us don't think about the echo in a room necessarily, just in our day-to-day lives. So you can always get them to just go stand in the middle of the room and give a clap, and it's pretty obvious if there is a distinct echo there. A really simple little test to do, and that's probably not a good place to record if there is a bit of echo. Another thing with recording location is the what's going on around them. So often there's traffic, they might have open windows, and there's, wind outside, or there's people moving around there in a semi-public place, something like that. There could be ventilation systems blowing air in the room, appliances. There's a whole list of things that can cause noise and just in their environment. So just, give them a reason to think about this, give them a little bit of a heads up, and think about what their recording environment is like and what they can do to make it better for the final recording. The second thing that we want to do, and this might be the biggest one, is to always, always, always get them to wear headphones. Most of us have multiple pairs of headphones lying around, so there's really no excuse why they should not be wearing headphones. And so the reason is, if you're on the call with them and they're just listening to your voice through their computer speakers and they're recording on their computer mic, your voice is coming out of their speakers right back into the mic. And so then you're going to be getting your own voice back in your headphones, and their recording on their end is going to have your voice in it twice. And so it just creates this feedback loop that just does not sound good. It does not sound professional. You want to have them to have headphones in at all times. If they don't have headphones at the start of the call, tell them to go find some, politely. But and if you can get them to get headphones with a mic attached on it, those like the Apple headphones that come with your iPhone, those are great. It's going to be a lot better than the computer microphone, and if not, an ideal professional studio microphone. So that might be the biggest thing you could do to improve guest audio quality, and a lot of people don't think about that from a guest perspective. So yeah, if you're going to do one thing, get them to wear headphones. Number 3, this is one of my 2 biggest pet peeves, is to tell them to pay attention to what they're doing with their hands during the recording. So many people, as usually guests, sometimes hosts as well, but there's things like clicking pens in and out, or just drumming their fingers on their desk, or typing on the keyboard is a big one, especially if they're recording out of their laptop mic. Every time they type on the keyboard, that is being picked up, and they might be talking while they're doing that, so you can't really cut it out after the fact. So you definitely want to just get them to be aware of what they're doing. Most people don't realize that these things are being picked up, and they don't even realize that they're doing them. So give them a bit of a heads up, and if at some point in the interview that you notice them doing it, just bring it up again and say, oh, hey, I noticed you're clicking your pen in and out, or you're typing on the keyboard. Would you be able to stop? Number 4, this is my biggest pet peeve, which is cell phones. So it kind of boggles my mind that we need to bring this up to people, that they're going to be interviewed, they're going to be on a podcast, but yeah, they need to turn their phones off. And the one that annoys me the most is when they have their phone on the desk beside them and they're getting notifications throughout the interview and they still don't turn them off. So definitely make a point to say in your guest brief that they should have their phone off. They should also have the vibration setting off, because if that's phone is on the desk vibrating, that's still going to be picked up by the mic and is going to be just annoying. The 5th thing I like to include is, we talked about this a little bit before, was to get them to record their own audio. So I usually am selective with who I bring this up with. Usually it would be a more tech savvy person who I think might have the capabilities to record their own audio and might not be intimidated or confused by it. If that's the type of guest you have, they could do it in GarageBand or Audacity, both of which are free. And that would be a little bit of extra work for them, but would create great sounding audio for you. If they're not so tech savvy, you can always get them to just put their phone on the desk and use the voice recorder app that's built in. And all phones have that. So they can just leave that on the desk and record that way and then send that to you after. If you're doing that with a phone, you're definitely going to want to have them just like double, triple, quadruple check that their phone is off, that the vibrate is off. Because if they're recording through that, that's definitely going to be loud if they do get a notification. And this is a bit of extra work for your guests. So again, I'm a bit selective with who I do it for, if they're going to be able to record the audio and then take the time to send it to me afterwards. So some of these things, it is a bit of extra work and you have to be selective. So definitely don't bring that up to everybody. It might just stress them out. And kind of in that vein, the 6th thing, the last thing that I include in my standard guest brief, is just reassure them that the episode is going to be edited after the fact. And if they make any mistakes or anything like that, they can be edited out. They can, after you have the finished product, you send it to them. And if there's something they don't like, you can cut it out. It just puts them at ease and helps them come off as a little bit more natural and comfortable. And, if they're messing things up and getting their thoughts wrong or need a minute to think about a question, that's not a problem. They're not, under the gun to come up with something instantaneously. And it's going to sound great the more natural they are. So I usually send these out in an email brief, maybe a week before the episode, maybe even a couple days before. And I also like to run through them on the call before we actually hit record. So, they've had a couple of times, they might not download the PDF or read through the entire guest brief before, but then we can go over it just to make sure and refresh in their minds kind of what they can do to help me out. And I definitely like to mention that the reason why I care so much about guest audio is that I want to make sure that they come across in the best light. So you really want to make it about them. You want to make sure that you tell them that your goal is that nothing is standing in the way of their message and their story, and show them how they'll benefit and how they'll come across in the best light. And everybody wants to look, or in this case, sound good. So most people will put in a bit of extra effort to help you out in that regard if it's also going to help them out. So I have one more idea for how to improve guest audio, and it's a bit of a crazy one. And I've heard a few people do it though. So this option is not for everyone. And actually, it's for pretty much no one, but I'm going to share it with you anyways, because you might be crazy enough to do it. You ready for it? Okay. Buy a microphone and ship it to your guests to record with every single week. Yeah. Every week, ship your microphone to different guests by mail. And it is a bit crazy, but I've heard of a few podcasters doing this and getting awesome results. Go figure. And it seems like I'm hearing about more and more people doing this. Obviously, this is probably a pretty big show. There's some cost and logistics involved with this. And if you are going to do this, you definitely want to be using Zencastr or have them recording their own audio. to actually maximize that the audio quality that the mic is going to give you. You might even want to send like a portable Zoom or Roland recorder if you're going to go with this option. So definitely not for everybody or very many people at all. If you do end up doing this, you are amazing, and I want to talk to you because this is just a little bit crazy, and I want to hear how it works out and how you organize all the logistics and everything and how that works. I'm not holding my breath to hear from anybody, but if that's you, get in touch. So these are some of the things that I like to include in my guest briefing. As you continue podcasting, you are sure to come up with many of your own pet peeves and things that guests, you find them doing over and over again, and they drive you crazy. So feel free to add to my list. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be updating the link in the description to the original post that this was based on that I posted earlier this week. And at the bottom of the post there, you can grab a free download of kind of a swipe email that I sent to my guests, as well as the document of the guest brief. So I hope you guys are able to put this to use in your own podcasts and help your guests sound a whole lot better. I will see you next week.